Getting some headlines from a pool spray with the president, who says, among other things, that he is not going to fire Fed Chair Powell, that he's just disappointed. Says once again that the Fed is out of control, far too stringent, and making a mistake on policy. But again, in his words, not going to fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve, of course, after his comments to Fox News both this morning and last night.
Yeah, also, again, saying that the correction was caused by the Federal Reserve, which has definitely been a source of debate, I think, among quite a number of investors and analysts today.
Though, of course, we just had Byron Wien on saying that the Fed's going to continue to raise and needs to get to a point of normalization. So it's not as if everybody feels, as the president does, that the Fed has somehow done this to the market.
Yeah.
Byron went on to say that he doesn't see a recession until 2021 or even later. Byron has been stubbornly bullish in the face of all kinds of crazy surprises all year long. By the way, it's turning out to be one of the worst starts to a fourth quarter in 10 years. We mentioned the Nasdaq having its worst month since November of 2008, although on a very short-term basis, we're off the lows of the session. We were down almost 400.
And I always wonder how much to put that into context with how the rest of the year has been. And, oh, by the way, last year, when stocks in the major indices were having such a run that individual stock pickers, hedge funds were just really having trouble comparing to the S&P because off the charts almost.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it is important to put it in context. Also, in general, October tends to be the most volatile month of the year in terms of trading. And of course, we're coming into this midterm election. We've had a number of guests note the fact that there seems to be uncertainty around that. But historically, you do tend to see stocks rally after you get those results. Ahead of time, uncertainty.
Yeah. Some of the big key names that we're watching this morning, Amazon fell below 1,700 for the first time since earlier in the year, but back above at 1,710. So watch that.
All right, well, let's send it down to D.C. Eamon Javers for the latest in terms of those comments from President Trump regarding the Fed and other things. Eamon.
Yeah, we're going to see the tape here momentarily of what the president has to say, but we're getting some flashes from wire reporters who are in the room with the president right now. And as you guys have been reporting, the president says the Fed is out of control. He says the Fed is far too stringent and making a mistake. The president also says that the correction yesterday was caused by the Federal Reserve. And he says he's not going to fire Fed Chair Powell. He's just disappointed. So a lot to chew over there in terms of the president's reaction. You know, for several days, he's been kind of dumping on the Fed. I talked to him on Tuesday earlier in the week, and he was very critical of the Fed at that time. He told me then that he hadn't spoken to Jay Powell at the Fed about his concerns. And we heard Larry Kudlow on CNBC this morning with you, Carl, suggesting that the president's not directing the Fed to do anything here. He's just voicing his concerns. Trump apparently reiterating that today in the Oval Office, suggesting that he's not going to fire Fed Chair Jay Powell. And then, of course, there's the whole fascinating question to unpack of whether or not the President of the United States can fire a Fed chair if it's not for cause. Can he just fire him because he doesn't like his policies? That's an endless debate here in Washington. And clearly the President believes that if he can appoint him, he can fire him.